everyone, welcome to this new episode of So Here's What Happened. I am your host, Carolyn Hines, and I'm joined by my co-host, LaNeysha Campbell, and this is the podcast where we talk about all things nerdy, film, TV shows, manga, comics, books, from the perspective of two nerdy black women. And this has been this episode has been a while in coming because we have kind of fallen behind with our podcast, with our episodes for summer. So this episode will be about what we watched and read during June and July, and as it will be published in August, we're a bit, as I said, a month behind. But thank you so much for listening to us. And for the first thing we're going to discuss today is going to be the manga Chainsaw Man, and LaNeysha is the one who's going to be discussing that. This is a manga where, for some people, if they're not familiar with manga and aren't familiar with the story and the imagery, they might be a bit taken aback when they first start reading this one, because the imagery is quite blunt and also violent. And I, for my one part, did feel a bit ew when I saw the first panels. I haven't read it, but I've seen panels for the manga, and I was just like, what is going on up in here? But LaNeysha's going to get into all of that. We're going to discuss what the expectations some people new to manga and new to the series might not be expecting, and how that can affect people's way of reading and receiving the story. And so, LaNeysha, take it away.
Yeah, so for my book, I honestly, I've been, as Carolyn said, it's been a minute since we've recorded, since like both of us have been a very busy summer, but I have finally found the time to read manga again. And yeah, I've been reading I started Chainsaw Man recently. A lot of people probably by now have heard the news that Chainsaw Man will be getting adapted into an anime. I've known about Chainsaw Man since it premiered as a manga, but like my whole thing was like, I'd rather wait until there's a bulk of of chapters before I read a manga. So I kind of just like to let things build up. But now it's at 100 chapters. So I decided to dig right into it. And honestly, I love it. Similar to like what Carolyn said, a big thing to understand and to keep in mind when you go into Chainsaw Man is that it is heavy on gore, blood, and violence. My biggest pet peeve with some people when it comes to like these kind of titles is that with a anime manga called Chainsaw Man, you know there's going to be blood and gore. So like I just don't want to hear any complaints about, oh, it's too gory, because his name is Chainsaw Man. But I think it's really interesting. So like the story centers on this character. His name is Denji. He's about 16 years old. He has to pay off his father's debt, and his father's debt is like millions at this point, millions of yen in debt to the mob. So he's basically been trying to pay off his debt. He sold his eye. He sold one of his testicles. Like they let you know, right? They let you know what you're getting, right? But you don't see it. Carolyn's making a very aghast face.
I'm making an aghast face for two reasons. What LaNeysha is describing, but also my sometimes co-host Yoko, as you can hear her, of course, always decides to bark. Stop it.
She's letting us know that she enjoys Chainsaw Man as well. But
you continue. I'm gonna mute myself while I have a discussion with my child.
So yeah, as I was saying, Chainsaw Man, the thing about the show also is that it takes place in a world where there are devils. Devils as in like they can be different sized monsters that wreak havoc on the world. But there is a force of people with special abilities, or they make contracts with devils. Denji at the beginning is not on that team, but he does make a contract with a devil, and that allows him to be able to fight back the devils. So the devils aren't always inherently bad. For the most part, they are. So this is important going into it. Through some unforeseen circumstances, Denji ends up making another contract with the same devil, and he turns into Chainsaw Man. I won't give away how that happens, but it's a very interesting scene. But the thing I like about this so much, like the art is amazing. It's gritty, but then it's also just like very action-packed and fluid. The artist does not hold back anything at all when it comes to illustrating the violence and the gore. So again, something to keep in mind, because like I said, my biggest pet peeve is when people watch things or read things and they go into it and be like, well, it was too gory. They shouldn't have made it this gory. Or I'm like, or You don't have to watch it or read it if you realized it wasn't for you because you don't like that much gore or violence. There's just a different way of phrasing these things. But anyways, highly recommend watching it. But again, I do recommend y'all understand when you go into it that this is a very violent series, but there's a lot of comedy, and I enjoy it so far. I'm on chapter 25 at this point. There's 100 chapters currently, and yeah, the anime will be coming out, I think, this year. So that's exciting, and I'm hoping that I can't wait to watch the anime after reading it.
So I have never read like any full chapter of Chainsaw Man, but I've seen panels of it. So yeah. I know what the gore looks like. I know what the concept is, and it is, as Nisha says, extremely gory. But the thing with, I don't know if it would be called an empath, but I'm the kind of person, like, if I see people like get cut or wound, like, I kind of have a sensation of it. Like, I get, like, it's not just sympathy, empathy. Like, I just get like also this weird sensation of I'm feeling the pain too. So when I see anything like that, my body just like cringes, and I just like imagine, and I'm just like, the whole concept of Chainsaw Man is that these blades of a chainsaw are coming out of his body, his arms and his head. And it just like, I remember the first time I saw a panel for Chainsaw Man, it was like my body just like fully repulsed, and it was just like I got like a headache because the whole concept of this poor boy turning into such a, and he's not just like a monster, like how you would say like a typical monster with like, like a slime monster or like an alienoid or whatever. He turns into a literal weapon. And like one of the most disturbing things like is a chainsaw. And I think that's probably why it also disturbs me too, because I've seen chainsaws in action. I've seen what they can do. So, and I've also seen like people get injured from working with things like circular saws and stuff from like woodworking shops and stuff. Like, I used to volunteer in an ER here in Canada, so I know I've seen injuries of people who work with those kind of materials, and I see what it could do. So like when I saw that panel, my body just went through this whole like this repulse, and I'm just like, I don't know, like the mind of these creators. I'm just like, but why do they explain why a chainsaw in particular, not like why his ass didn't like turn into swords or
It has something to do with the devil that he made a contract with.
Was the person the devil? Did he used to work as an arborist?
So and this isn't really a big spoiler, but like at the beginning of the series, Denji, the contract he makes with the devil, it's like it looks like a dog devil, but it has a chainsaw sticking out of its head. So think of like a dog and a chainsaw is fused together. So like that's and they make a contract. He's like, because he's a smaller devil. He's not that strong, so he's usually prey to bigger, stronger devils. So he's like, well, I'll look out for you if you look out for me, and we can work together. We can like, kill devils. So like, it's basically like he has a dog. And then the unforeseen circumstances I mentioned is that the mob basically betrays him, and they kill him. So Denji is dead. And they also kill the devil. But the thing about devils are like, if they consume blood, they can regenerate, but it's also a way for them to sign contracts or form contracts. So Denji kind of like made a contract agreement with the devil earlier on that like, if anything ever happens to me, you can take my body. But the dog devil decided like, I'm giving you a second chance. I want to live life with you still. I like you. And like basically they have fused together, and he has his little chainsaw pull cord in his chest, and every time to activate his powers he has to rip the cord and they go off. But I think the interesting thing to note is like, this isn't like some other and like manga where like they don't mention like, oh, is it painful, and he's like, oh yeah, it's painful, but I don't feel it. Like, it's not like Wolverine with the sneaky claws or whatever
every time they come out. That's
right. And he's like, oh, it hurts every time they come out, and he's like, but you don't act like it hurts. Like, no. Then she's like, it hurts like hell. I really don't like to use this power unless I absolutely have to, because it hurts. And the chainsaws run off of blood, so if he's losing blood as he uses his chainsaws.
So his blood is the oil for the chainsaw.
Pretty much. Yeah, but he's constantly saying like, no, this hurts. Like, it hurts him excruciatingly when he has to use that. So he's just like, I don't want to use it if I don't have to, which makes sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, then you mentioned the Wolverine thing, and that line, the thing with that line in the X-Men movie from Wolverine, I've always taken it to mean not that it hurts him, but that he hurts others. Like every time they come out, the intention is to be hurt someone. So that's why I've always interpreted that line to mean that they hurt, but they hurt other people. That's how I've always think. But then like think about Genji, there's another character that we've talked about Sweet Home before in a previous episode. That was in 2020 because Sweet Home released in December 2020. But the main character, like close spoilers, but this is 2 years going on, people. Come on now. Yeah, the main character anymore. When he finally gets his powers, right? When he finally does get his powers, like he gets these massive black wings, but they're like. But the feathers are like shards of like granite because they're like this hard stone, and like they can fly up and turn into swords and stuff. But like the way how they show it in the show, and I'm guessing in the manhwa that is based on, because it's based on a manhwa, is that every time they come out his back, they hurt him too. Like it's extremely painful because they're like the blades are ripping through his back like when they emerge. Right. And so like when you talk about Kenji, that made me think of that character too from Sweet Home. Like his power is just like brutally painful for him too. Like cool. Like the effects seem to do a fantastic job, but I'm just like they look excruciatingly painful too.
It is. And it looks amazing to see like in the manga. So like, and similarly, I agree, like because in the Sweet Home, I'm like, oh, they're so pretty to look at, but it hurts. Like you can just imagine it like, oh. But yeah, that's Chainsaw Man. But on from there, let's go ahead and get into TV. What have you been watching?
So I haven't been watching as many dramas I would normally watch. Issues, cognitive impairment. I was having speech and processing issues. But I did recently get back into watching dramas. But I'm not going to talk about an Asian drama this time around. I'll do that in the next episode. But I will talk about Power Book 3, Raising Kanan. So I've never really watched the previous Power episodes. So there was Power and then there was Ghost. And this one is the third, I guess we would say the third book in the story. And it's about raising Kanan. So Kanan is the original, is who Ghost is, if I'm honest correctly. And I watched this show. I watched some of the episodes for this show because we interviewed the cast and the show creator, Steve Khan, for this show for Africa, and it was really interesting because I wasn't really first it's a STARZ show, and I don't have STARZ. I can only watch STARZ when I get screeners. But it was really interesting to me because like it's set in the 90s. And like me being in the 90s, you're too young, Nisha. Too young. But me being
I was born in 91.
You don't, but do you remember? Do you have clear images of the fashion, of the cars, the music?
Yes, I do.
Well, okay, yes.
My earliest memories are when I was 4, ma'am. I understand though, but like, yeah, I remember at least from like 95, I have like memories.
Oh my gosh, you said 95. That's when I was going into secondary. No, I was in secondary school because I went into secondary school in 94. So I'm like an 80s baby. I was born in 1983. Yes, people. This girl is going to be 39. At the end of August.
But you don't look a day over 30.
I know, God, praise God. Black does not crack. Amen. Jesus. The genes, preparation. This is genetic preparations. But it was really interesting to watch this because they have done such a fantastic job, like getting the vibe of the 90s. Yes, the show is set in New York. It's set in America. But like, so there's very specific things of the 90s that I think translates across the diaspora, like the fashion, the hair, the clothing, the speech, the music. Like I grew up hearing the same music. I grew up watching my brother and his friends wear these ridiculous outfits, you know, and watching the girls getting their hair flat ironed and permed and like, all of this stuff. So it was like really interesting to see that. But this story is so interesting because it's about Kanan, yes, but this particular season to me seems like it's about the mother, who is Raquel or Rock, played by Patina Miller. She's so badass. She's so good. And she's basically she runs this family. She is the matriarch, She has her 3 brothers, and then she has her son, who is Kanan, played by Makai Curtis. And then there's also her friends daughter that she's raising, Jukebox, played by Haley Kilgore. And it's about these dynamics of how, like, there's the woman, she one thing about the show is like there's no discussion of gender dynamics. Like there's no discussion about she has to prove her ability to lead these men. It's like drug dealing, but there's no discussion of having to prove her worth on her badassness of ruling these men. There's nothing about that. It's basically most of the strife comes from the fact that her brothers are kind of beginning to doubt her some of the decisions she makes, not because she's a woman, but because they think she's moving too fast. You know, they're thinking like, you're taking 10 steps ahead, but are you thinking about the consequences of some of these actions, right? So I think that's such an interesting thing. And then there's her son, Kanan, who is just like, she didn't force him to do it, but she ordered him to do something in the second season, and she's starting to see the consequences of that action. And it's so interesting to see a Black woman playing this specific role, where I don't recall any other show where you've had a Black woman be the head of a drug family, right? We've had this a couple of times in like Italian mob movies, and like a woman, like her position would be called a mole. She'd be a mole, but and that's mole, M-O-L, not M-O-L-E. But she's just running these women, and she's so badass. But then like there's also the softer side of her as a mother and as a sister and as an aunt. And then there's all this whole dynamics of sexual identity, but like not about sexual identity with regards to Jukebox. Like she's queer, but there's no discussion if she's queer. Like you just assume she is, and that's
right.
It. And then there's like music, and like she's Haley Kilgore is a fantastic singer. Like there's this whole discussion about music with her character, like how she wants to be a musician, but now she's meeting her mom who left her when she was a baby. And like her mom is a gospel singer, and like there's this whole thing about how Black people, we turn to music to like help us like cope with situations, but also how we turn to gospel music. And I really want to see how that plays up for the rest of the season, because from what I've been told, since I didn't watch the first season, this season, Raising Kanan, is a prequel to the very first season. So like if you've seen season 1 and season 2, you know how everything that's happening now in Raising Kanan is going to end. But I didn't watch it. But from what I've been told, she becomes pretty like fearful. Apparently she's similar to this character called Mouse from The Wire. And I'm like, if that's who she turns into, I can't wait to see like how that journey begins in this season, because like to see the character she is, to see who Jukebox is now in season 3, I'm just like, how did you get there? You know, like how did you get where you ended up? And all of them too, because like it's just I think it's a really good show, and the cast is amazing. Patina Miller, she's like, I've seen 4 or 5 episodes, and like she's just knocking everything out of the park every episode. And I'm familiar with her because she's been in a few sci-fi films and TV shows, and she's been in like Madam Secretary and in Hunger Games. She was in Hunger Games in the last 2 films. She is the one that took over when Snow and the other president died. You know, the Black woman? That's her.
Yes. I think she's from like District 4 or something. The only one who had sense.
Yes, the only leave it to the Black woman to come through with a proper plan.
Where she's people. Like, I don't think anyone else should go through this pain again, guys.
Yeah, guys. She was like, you know what? Let's nip this shit in the bud. Like, right. Not.
Yeah.
But that's Patina. That's Patina Miller. She's a fantastic actress. So that's my recommendation for June and July. Power Book 3, Raising Kanan. On the STARZ Network, you can find my interview with Patina. We did a roundtable with like the whole main cast, but we didn't have enough time for all the journalists to speak to the whole cast. We only got one person, and I picked Patina, and we had a great chat. And you can find that on my YouTube channel under the Africa Virtual Roundtables videos, or I'm saying Africa Virtual Roundtable playlist. And now for her watch, Nisha's going to tell us what is her recommendation. Nisha.
Yeah. So I actually forgot one that I'm actually very excited to talk about. So I'll try to keep mine pretty short. So I've watched The Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This is the 2021. I won't even call it those reboots anymore. They're just like adaptations. And then there's iCarly, the current one where iCarly is grown. That's on Paramount Plus. And then I also finished watching P-Valley, which that's the one I'm most excited to talk about. So real quick.
Wait. How about this? How about instead of you talking about P-Valley, then you say P-Valley for the next one? Because I really need to get caught up on P-Valley. Please. We can
how about this? I will do this. How about we have a P-Valley episode?
Yes.
We can record sometime this week. Okay, y'all. So y'all will get a special P-Valley episode.
Yes.
Okay. I can contain myself. I won't talk about P-Valley. All right. So then
normally I don't mind spoilers, but
I know you don't mind spoilers, but if you really
wild.
Girl, I can't. Ooh, okay, we'll just save that for a bonus episode then. So, anyways, going into like Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, this is the 2020-2021 adaptation of, of course, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Funny enough, someone mentioned to me, apparently the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles have only had 4 animated adaptations, so only 4 animated series. When you like really think about it, I'm like, yo, I really thought they had more. But it makes complete sense because there was the one from the 80s, there was one in the 90s, early 2000s. There was the one before this one, I think 2016, and now we have. Then that one was like a CGI, and now you have this one. And I have to say, I grew up on the second I remember the first adaptation. However, I remember the second adaptation more. And it's like for people who grew up watching Saturday morning cartoons, and it was like, I think it was Kids WB or Fox Kids. It was one of those. It would come on there. Like, that was my jam because the Turtles were like a bit edgier. Of course, no one, without any shock to anybody, I am definitely a Raphael girl. Like, that is my favorite turtle.
He was the most sensible one.
When they let him be sensible, which is something. So like I believe this is a trend though, like at least in the 2 that I remember the most, so like the CGI one and the second one, Raphael and Leonardo always had their rivalry, but Leonardo typically was like the leader, so everybody looked to Leonardo to be a leader. In this one, Raph is the leader. Raph is the oldest brother, and he's like, I love how. Okay, so the best thing about the designs is that they're all very unique and different turtles. So like Donnie's a soft shell turtle, Mikey, Raphael is a snapping turtle, so like the big snapping turtles that can snap a person's.
They're aggressive.
Aggressive, but he's also very much like Raph. He's a himbo. So I'm gonna look up the other 2
for that. For using different species of turtles, like what?
Yeah, and I think it's just like, and it plays into their design. So like, I think like people have like been used to like, in previous versions they all look identical, kind of, like aside from like their accessories, but in this one they like really stand out on their own for like by them being different species. So I love that and the design. And then also there's a movie that's on Netflix in the first season of the animated series from Nickelodeon is also on Netflix. So highly recommend y'all check them out. But I was just gonna look up so I can be more accurate. Yeah, so Raphael's an alligator snapping turtle. Favorite thing about him. Leonardo is a red-eared slider. So the fast, like the fast swimming turtles.
Oh, okay.
They're known for like swimming very, like, I think they call them like swimming turtles or something. Donatello's spiny soft shell turtle, which those are always weird looking to me. And then Michelangelo is an ornate box turtle. So I just love their design so much. They're very unique and different, but then it's like the voice acting is great. They all like have a very New York feel, but like different parts of New York where like Donnie, of course, is very smart, but he's also very like, I have to commend everybody in this show for the voice acting because they just do a really good job of making all of them sound different and unique. Like Leonardo is he thinks he's so cool and he knows everything. So he has a very slick and smooth like personality. Whereas Raph, being the big brother and the protector of everybody, he's like, guys, you have to be serious. But then like next minute, he's like, oh, he's goofing off or he's looking at something. It's like, oh, this is cute. So it's just like, it's perfect. I really, really love it because I think it does a good job of blending, the comedy and the action because this series actually has made me want to get into reading the comics that's still going on because there's a very dark and edgy comics title that's going on right now called The Last Ronin for the Ninja Turtles.
Of course there is.
Of course, well, like that's the thing. They started off dark in the beginning, and then they got like in the original comics, everything was like black and white. It was darker back then, and then like I feel like this one really does a good job of balancing because it's not all dark, but like when it's serious stuff is happening, serious stuff is happening.
I think they got a bit lighter in tone, probably I think around the early 2000s, because in the first time, like you said, they were kind of dark, more serious tone.
Yeah,
and like,
1984.
The first film was dark in concept too, but still darky because like, come on, it's a film about giant turtles who do martial arts.
Somebody literally said like, can we make them like pizza and like talk like surfers? And there's like,
yeah, right. So like, but it sounds like dark elements because like again, like these are turtles who are like living in a sewer, horrible conditions. Their master is a giant talking rat. And like they're fighting like samurai from like Japan for some reason
and
that has
ninjas,
never ever made
and then alternate. But in this one they fight yokai.
But why?
Because they can. Don't question it.
I know. Sometimes that's like that's how my brain works. My brain is always like, but why?
I can
explain why. I have to turn it off and just say because reasons.
Apparently, I mean, the Ninja Turtles have fought aliens, the Krang. They have fought interdimensional monsters. So like them fighting yokai felt like, this is like the most.
It's not a stretch. It's just that's how my brain works. My brain, my brain just always automatically goes, but why?
But to answer your question, it's because like there's a secret underground city of yokai that have been living underneath New York this entire time,
and somehow through all the immense construction going on in New York, it's never been discovered.
No, because they're hidden. However, the good thing, this one even has its own original origin story. Is like, instead of it just being that the Turtles and like Master Splinter got into some ooze with the Foot Clan, like I feel like it changes every time. Instead, this time, apparently Master Shredder was like, imagine Jet Li, Jackie Chan, and Bruce Lee, one person. He was like a famous kung fu movie star. And I think they call him Lu, like I'm not gonna butcher it.
Not
like
Lu Chang. Lu Kang?
No, not Lu Chang. It was like Lu Wen Shu. Like it was like, let me just look at Master Splinter because it's hilarious. So basically, Master Splinter is actually all right. I'm not gonna worry about his name because I keep getting the main one that I don't want. Okay, so like I was saying, he's basically a blend. If you took Jackie Chan, Bruce Lee, and Jet Li into one person, he's a kung fu movie star. His name is Lu Jitsu. That's a stage name, but he's still Hamato Yoshi. So
they really did not try with this one. They were like, let's just be as literal.
No, but like they want.
Why didn't they just name it Wing Chun Jiu-Jitsu? Like, come on now.
But it's because like that's the thing. He chose his own stage name because like in this version, instead of him leaving, coming to America with his wife and kids, it's that he wanted to become a movie star.
The writers chose this name for him.
No, but I'm saying, okay, yes, but like that's because the character himself is like he chose, instead of like following his family's like history, like the former versions, like and honoring them, he chose like, I'm going to use my talents for fame and fortune.
No,
and that's kind of,
I don't mean that. I mean just the name, literally.
Yes, but like that gets at it. No, but I feel like that like is a nod to like those 1970s kung fu characters with like the cheesy names. I mean, I don't know who is the writers and like what they're. So just going off of that.
I'd be like, you guys didn't stretch yourself like that much, did you?
Because he's corny. They just wanted to make him a corny kung fu star, and I love it. Oh my gosh. But so there's just like that whole thing. So it's while it's the same story that we're all very familiar with, it's still very different and fresh. And everybody should watch it if you are a Ninja Turtles fan, because I love the Ninja Turtles. And this is just I think it's a new way of telling the story. So then other show, since we won't be talking about P-Valley right now, is iCarly. That's it's not really a reboot, it's a continuation, kind of like what they did with Raven's Home, which like what I will say is like nothing against Raven's Home. I've watched it a few times with my sister and it's all right, but like I don't care about them kids. And I like that iCarly is not that. I like that iCarly is very much about Carly being a 30-something living in Seattle still after she lived it. Like it picks up not right when she left off and the end of the iCarly original series, but like it kind of just is a continuation where it's like, oh yeah, after moving back, after going to Italy and being there and going to school there and graduating, blah blah blah, she's back here. And she has a roommate named Harper. And like, I will be honest, the reason why I decided to watch this show is because I love Lacey Mosley. She's hilarious. I love her podcast, Scam Goddess, but she's on the show as Harper, Carly's roommate. And I just appreciate how they aged up the show, but they still retained the comedy that iCarly is known for. Like, there are some parts where it's a little cringe where you're just like, oh God, like Carly's trying to be an influencer. But at the same time, like, they're definitely making fun of the whole influencer culture. And it's like, it's interesting because like when iCarly started back in the day, like, yeah, it was being a YouTuber. Now it's like being a streamer and like doing all these extra things, TikToks, Instagrams. Like, I like how the show is kind of like not shying away also from the fact that Carly is a grown woman, that she is an adult grown woman with adult grown woman problems. And that translates also into her dating life. And I mean, I just get it. They talk about sex on the show. They talk about dating. They talk about relationships. I do really what I do love about Harper's character is that Lacey Mosley's character, and she commented on this before, is that I love the woman who is actually the showrunner on the show, but I can't remember her name right now. But like they made sure to give Harper agency when it came to her sexuality, because like they are not afraid of talking about like, oh, Harper is bisexual. Well, there's not this big old, oh, well, what does that mean? Are you half and half? Like, she's like, they make jokes about it, but it's like, it's her writing her jokes about it. We're like, getting away from the misconceptions that people assume about someone who's bisexual. So it's like, there's a joke where Spencer and Harper are like, well, let's see who can get the most numbers and pick up the most people here at this party. And he's like, well, that's not fair because you're bisexual. And like, she's like, oh, I hope you're not suggesting just because I am attracted to men and women that means I have some unfair advantage against you. And he's like, you're right. Like, there's things that they just like are able to make jokes about now that like, I just appreciate that this isn't, I appreciate that they didn't try to keep iCarly at the age and comedic intelligence that it was before, but rather it evolved into being like, this is definitely for adults. You could watch it with kids if you want to, because like, I mean, think of it as like almost like Friends, How I Met Your Mother level of like comedy. But like, this is definitely for the people who watched iCarly. And maybe for kids who are like, I don't know, teenagers, preteens, I don't know if they watch these days. But yeah, I appreciate it for being a fan of the show when I was in like high school and grade school.
I never really watched iCarly. I've seen like a few episodes and stuff, but it's like that kind of like the comedy in Nickelodeon shows has never appealed to me. Even when I was younger, like they never did. Like the whole laugh track, the canned laughter, like Nickelodeon shows have always been super cheesy to me.
It's like, the fact that like iCarly and Victorious were the only ones that I actually liked when I was like around that age, like in that target audience. And you're right, because the other ones were just like, this is so cringe. Like, it's not funny.
Oh, it's cringy. So,
but like,
even like no shade to Raven, but I never really like that so Raven either. Because again, like all of them have the same type of humor. And again, because all of them are again written by cringy white people. So it's like then all those like even the ones on the Disney Channel all never appealed.
It was always a hit and miss. Like you might find a good teen tween like comedy show, but like sitcom show. But like I feel like back in the day, there were more. Like I liked My Brother and Me, Taina, like what was the other one? Melissa Explains It All. Like those were some like really good classic ones that I think did a good job of being funny. And then it's just like when we got older, there just weren't that many. No. Or it's like if you weren't in that target audience, you were just gonna be like, this is not for me. And that's how I feel now. Like I want to watch,
especially if you're back. We only had shows like Moesha and
and that one was more dramatic than it was comedy too.
Yeah, we had more mature, like for Black people. Like, we had more mature
like Moesha, Living Single, you know, those Girlfriends. That was more the type of comedy. Like back home in Barbados, again, because access to like TV channels was kind of hard for us because unless you had money and you had money for satellite TV or you had money for STV, it was kind of hard picking up those channels. And then we had like what we would call oh my god, it's called multi-choice TV, which is what North Americans would call cable. Right, but that was super expensive. But we could pick up I think that they were being pirated. Those were pirated channels that we were getting. But through this multi-choice, it was like cable TV, but we only had like sometimes we weren't guaranteed which channels you would get. So like I would be trying to be seeing shows like those kind of shows, like the Disney, Nickelodeon, Fox TV shows, and I would be just like, this humor is not me. That's why I was more of a sci-fi nerd growing up, sci-fi action show. I watched mostly like, you know, like the old shows like Matlock and Murder, She Wrote, and then for sci-fi it was Star Trek and Time Tracks and there was another one. It was Star Trek, Time Tracks, MacGyver. Those kind of shows were more my speed back in the day.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that maybe that's the point because like you mentioned, like we're both like a decade apart, and it's just like some of these shows. It's like if you just weren't in it at that age, you're just like, why would I watch this show? Yeah. Like I got into iCarly like at the right point where it's like I can watch this and laugh about this and this is funny and wacky. But like if I was in college, I probably wouldn't have cared about it as much. Where it's like I just think, yeah, it's better now that I appreciate that they aged up the comedy as they aged up the characters instead of trying to where it's like I get it with Raven. Like they definitely wanted to have the focus on her kids and like, yeah, that's fine. And that probably introduces a whole bunch of like new audiences to That's So Raven. But at the same time, I'm just like, but I came here for Raven.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned our age difference, like we were a generation apart. Yes, people.
Yeah.
I think that's what I kind of like about our dynamic because like we have that what you would call a generational gap, but because like our experiences are so different, like we do have like different viewing experiences from when we were younger. But now that we're both adults, we have kind of the same, which is still kind of funny. We have the same viewing experiences now because we tend to watch like the same type of films and shows and stuff. But but because of how we grew up, like our experiences from our youth, our younger days are like complete opposites. It's like complete 180 from each other. So that's I think
right.
Like that's just I just thought I would mention it. I was just thinking about it. You see, that's what makes us different.
It's what makes the show work, you know. So then let's go ahead and get into the last part. As y'all know, I got back from Crunchyroll Expo earlier this month, and I got a lot of exciting things I want to talk about. One main thing, and my movie is included in that. But Carolyn has been a very busy bee, and also you just got back from what festival was it?
I didn't get back from anywhere. I stayed in Toronto, but
you know what I mean.
I would have loved to have been able to travel because it was held in Montreal. I was at the I virtually attended the 2022 Fantasia Film Festival, and this is a film festival that's more for genre shows, so mostly like drama, horror, thrillers, and sci-fi, and mostly from Asian countries, but also including Canadian, as I said, because it's hosted in Montreal. But most of the platform films come from across like Asia, especially East and Southeast Asia. And I didn't watch as many films as I would normally watch because I wasn't feeling well. But I'm going to only briefly discuss 3 of the films that I watched. And I also did a few interviews for them as well. One of the films I watched is Next Sohee. This is a South Korean film by writer and director July Jung. So this is her second feature film. And it stars Bae Doona and Kim Shi-yeon. So Kim Shi-yeon is a relatively new actress. And I think she did a fantastic job in this film. But Next Sohee was written and directed by July Jung, and this is her second feature film. And this film, it deals with very heavy topics. So I would suggest for anyone to be aware going into this film that it is about suicide. And it's about it's about this young girl, this teenager, Sohee, played by Kim Shi-yeon, who joins what is called an externship program for her school. So that, first in a lot of countries, when you were graduating from high school or secondary school, in my case, you would do after school work programs, or you do work programs during summer to get extra credits and extra points and that kind of stuff. So this program is like that. So it's specifically for these young girls who are recruited to work in a call center. First, teenagers should not be working in a call center, especially teenagers in school, because call centers. I worked one in a call center, and I said never ever again. And like you have people who are rude to the call center operators. You have people who are dismissive, who are extremely sexist, especially because they hear young girls on the phone. They're sexist and they're just like disrespectful. And you have these young girls who are being subjected to all of this verbal abuse from customers. But then you also have like their supervisors and the CEOs of the companies putting a lot of pressure on them, saying you got to meet these performance goals. If you do this, we'll give you a bonus. Things that they promise bonuses, promise gifts and stuff, but they never give them to the girls. And Sohee, after she witnesses something extremely terrible, this is not spoiler because it's literally in the show, in the film description, she commits suicide. But the big part of this film, this film is kind of like divided into two parts, but it's so well connected. In the first half of the film, it's about us getting to know Sohee. We see her with her friends. We see her like she was a dancer, and we see her at the call center. We see how she changes from this very bright and optimistic and very forthright young girl who was very open and she not that she was doing anything, but she was standing for herself and standing for others. And this how she just slowly began to change over time from working this part. And then after her death, you see the second part is the detective played by Beduna, who is kind of backtracking and trying to figure out why did this young girl do this? What would make a young girl commit suicide, especially when there was no sign that to people, there didn't seem to be no sign. And for her, it was like no one else is trying to find out what's happening. People just accepted that, she just committed suicide. She's like, people don't just commit suicide, right?
Right.
For teenagers, she's like, something has to be wrong. So like she finds out, she starts to dig into this company, and it's basically through the investigation, you see how the system is failing these young girls, right? How the system is failing these students and how their parents feel them, because her parents were only interested in saying, oh my gosh, she has a job. Like, they're like, oh, she's a contributing member of society. She's going to be able to grow up to be a young woman with ambition or whatever. And like, they're just happy their daughter has a job, and they're just think, oh, this is going to help her graduate and go to a good college, whatever. And her teachers are exploiting her because the teacher that signed up for her, he knew that the company is shady, but he didn't do anything when she went to him and said, she's like, something's wrong here. I need help. And the teacher didn't help her. So through the investigation, you see how like the system, the parents, the teachers, the companies, and even the education ministry fails these girls, and it's all systematic. It's not just one person, it's a whole system that's failing all of these students. And the really sad thing about this film, this is self-created, but it's based on a true story. So the writer, the director, and it's more than one case that it's happened more than once. But she read about this particular case, and she started to do more research on it, and that's what inspired her to make this film. She wants to bring attention to it, and she's like, this shouldn't keep happening, but it's still happening. And it's a really good film. But I said it's very heavily. It's very heavy emotionally, but I think I'm interested to see once it's released in South Korea what the response to it will be, because it hasn't been released theatrically in South Korea as yet. I think it's going to be released in September. So that's one that I'm going to be following to see the reactions to that. And I interviewed the director, July Jung, for the podcast for Kanan Talk. So that is on our podcast. Right now is on our RSS feed and on different podcast streaming platforms like Acast. I haven't been able to write up my write-up blog post for that soon. I will do that soon. And I also interviewed the director for another film called Red Shoes, which is a Japanese film. That was really a really good interview. And I interviewed the director for Special Delivery. There's a story behind why that isn't published yet, but I'll publish that eventually and soon. And the next film I'm going to talk about is a film called, there's two films I'm going to talk about. One is called Alienoid. So Alienoid is an interesting film. Alienoid, first, I'll say this film is long. It's 2 hours and 22 minutes. Dang. And it's the first part of 2 films. And I forgot when I started watching this film that is a part 1. So when I looked at the runtime, I'm like, okay, it's 2 hours and 20 minutes. This is a thing. And then when I got to it, I was like, oh, wait, this film is in 2. But it takes place in 2 different timelines. So there's the past during the Goryeo era, which is around 1301 to and it takes place, it starts 1301, and then around 1318, around that time. And then it takes place in our present day. So historical, present day, sci-fi action. And kudos to the director, because it does he has like, I like his vision. I like where he's going with the film. I appreciate when a director is I'm gonna try to be different. I'm gonna make something that isn't mainstream. I'm gonna make something that is unique. And this film is very unique. But it also, I think, also pays a lot of homages to like a lot of different genres. Like there's clear references to like the Avengers, the first Avengers film. There's clear references to the first Mission Impossible film. There's references to other like South Korean action films where I watch this. I'm like, this is like definitely an homage to this film. This is an homage to this particular genre. And it's really cool, but it's not like too on the nose where it's distracting. You're just like, okay, I see where he's going with this. And like, one thing I love about South Korean films in particular, like they, even if they don't have a massive budget, they know when it comes to CGI and VFX, they know where to put their money. And this film has flawless this. I saw it on my laptop. I would love to see this film. I would love to see specific scenes of this film in the cinema because the CGI for this film is flawless. Like the integration of VFX in especially the historical parts. And then also in the modern day, it's really, really clean. The action sequences are really well directed and done as well. The cast is really good. But my main critique of the film is that it takes a bit long to really feel cohesive. It feels like it's kind of like two separate film stories being told at the same time. And I think in the past, the sequences that take place in the past, that could have been achieved with flashbacks and not create a whole separate storyline. Or I think what he could have done is have the first film take place in the past and the second film take place in the present.
Got you.
I think that's what he could have done. And it would have worked, but I think what he's trying to show is like kind of like I haven't seen it yet, but kind of like Everything Everywhere All at Once in the film with Michelle Yeoh, how it's like all of these different timelines and this thing. So I think he was kind of doing something similar. And this past and present thing is not new, especially in like Asian cinema. This is a very common feature and a very common storyline narrative in Asian cinema in particular, where they do a lot of past and present. So it's not anything new, but I just think because the film feels long, when it starts to feel cohesive and the story starts to come together, is like around the hour and 27-minute mark. That's when I looked at the time. I'm like, okay, I'm now with it. I'm no longer confused. And then I looked at the time. I'm like, it took over an hour to get to this point. So I think like it could have done a bit more. Like the plot or the timeline needed more finessing. I think there's some particular characters that either could have been removed to cut away on the time, or just, as I said, make the whole, either cut the film into two sections about the past and then the second film will be the present. But it's still entertaining. I think it's really entertaining. And when I got to the end, I'm like, okay, I need to see what happens in the second film. So I will definitely be watching the second film. So that is Alienoid by Choi Dong-hoon. And also this film has a really good cast, but some of the best actors don't really get much screen time in the first films. I wonder if they're going to get more screen time in the second film, because this has like a really good cast of people that I really like from dramas and other films. So I was like expecting more, and like, oh, so I hope they get more screen time in the second film, because like, it will be kind of a waste to have such a good cast and just have these people doing side characters. But also one of the main actors, Kim Woo-bin, I just gotta say how proud I am of him, because this is his first big project. This film took 13 months to film. Both films took 13 months to film. But the reason I have to mention him is because he was diagnosed with nasopharyngeal cancer in 2017. So he took a break, almost a 2-year break for cancer treatment. So to see him back in fighting form, literally, because he's playing a lot of action heavy roles after being sick for so long, it was just like, oh, I'm like, you're back. So there's that. And then the second film, I'm just going to briefly talk about, again, is Special Delivery. And this one stars Park So-dam, who a lot of people again know from Parasite and a whole bunch of other projects, and Yoo Sung-ho, he's such a cutie pie, and Han Young-min, and this little cute, adorable little boy named Jung Hyun-yeon, and Yeon Woo-jin, and Kim Woo-sung, and it's a really good cast of performers that I'm kind of familiar with. And this one is think Transformer, but with a female driver. And a young female driver. Not Transformer, Transporter, sorry. The Transporter. Oh,
I was like, okay.
Not Transformer. The Transporter, but with a young female driver. And like
you got me. Go ahead.
The stunt I also have to give a shout out to the stunt choreographers and the stunt drivers for action films in particular. And this one, I think they did such a fantastic job choreographing the driving stunts, because so much of it is taking place within the car and it's about this car stunt driving. they did a really fantastic job choreographing the stunts for this and figuring out where to put things and like filming from within the car. And while we know Park Seo-dam isn't doing all the stunt driving, but I think she's very convincing. Like, you know, sometimes you can tell when somebody is like, they don't look natural behind the wheel doing these kind of specific stunts. You can tell she did a lot of work, like to really get in line with this character. And she did a really good job. And I think it's a really well directed film, and the storyline is simple. It's like, one we've seen many times, but it's still different because like, you get to see it from a female, a woman in this kind of role. We don't get to see female actresses in these specific type of roles often, right? And it's especially Park Seo-dam. I'm like, look at you, Park Seo-dam, another action role in your pocket. Come on, do some more. But this is Special Delivery. It's really good. It's going to be on. So Special Delivery Alienoid is going to be released online and virtual and VOD by Wago USA. So you can go on their website and look up when you can like purchase them for online viewing. And I think Special Delivery is on Viki actually. It's also available for rental on Viki as well. But you can go on the Wago USA site to see where else it's also being distributed, because it might not be on Viki permanently, but it will be permanently on the Wago USA site. So check them out there. And those are my 3 films. I'm tired. Let's go, Nisha. Take it away.
All right. To bring us home, I only have 2, so I'm just going to keep it real quick. So before I get into Dragon Ball Superhero, which that name is so long, but honestly, it's very fitting. I very quickly want to touch on Thor: Love and Thunder. Yeah. So yes. I saw it. And maybe this is another bonus episode if Carolyn also wants to dive into it another day. But wait, very quickly, I will just say this. Y'all can wait until it comes on Disney Plus.
Isn't it already on Disney Plus?
Not yet. Really? It'll be on Disney Plus soon. Doctor Strange just got on Disney Plus. So like Thor, it came out like maybe less than a month or so ago. So it'll be on Disney Plus soon. So my point is, y'all can wait until it comes on Disney Plus. It's not worth a trip to the theater. I mean, I'm at a point where like I've been really good at timing when I go to theaters now. So like it's not too crowded. So I don't mind going to theaters. But when I go, I would like the trip to be worthwhile. That's not me saying the movie is terrible. However, like when I went with me and my sister, I'm like, okay, you know, the magic that they were able to capture with like Thor Ragnarok. I think the thing that happened was like they basically gave Taika Waititi the direction of more of this. We want more of this, and we want more of fun Thor, more of Thor having fun, but also balancing like the dark side of the things that he's dealing with. But you know, like, but punch it up. And I just feel like they got so focused doing that I think it's kind of like a distraction to like some of the deeper parts of the story, which like spoiler but not spoiler. If you're familiar with the whole Lady Thor or like the Mightiest Thor, sorry, it's actually Mightiest Thor. You are familiar with the fact that Jane Foster and Thor, like they're in this movie together. This is they're reuniting and everything. This movie kind of touches on why they broke up, but it doesn't really get into like it touches on it, but it doesn't get into it.
Level.
It's so surface level, and they just do it in a flashback, and they're basically saying like, oh, it's because they grew apart and they're busy, and Thor wanted a life with Jane, and he was considering what that could be, but then he was worried about losing that. I'm like, well, why was he worried about losing that? You're a literal god. You could have children with her. You like, no one really went beyond them. Like, why are you worried that you'll lose that, Thor? Is it because you realize that she is a mortal being, and that means her life is a blip in yours, and you're worried about what that will mean if you were to have children? These are the questions. This is what should have been getting explored, and instead it just like makes you assume all that. And again, I'm not one of those people like, well, I thought it was going to do this. I'm like, no, you touched on this. I don't understand why, like, what was Thor's motivation, and then in like hesitating or like.
And they would have had time to explore that, right? Because the film is like pretty lengthy, isn't it?
It's like almost 2.5 hours long. It's not that. I don't think it would have been that hard to like spend a little bit more time exploring that like part of it. And then towards the end, my whole thing is like, you could literally just wish her to be healed. You could literally just wish her to be healed. You could wish the cancer away. But I understand that like they wanted this to be closing a chapter on Jane and Thor and like moving forward for Thor. Like, and it's like, as much as this is supposed to be a movie about grief and like, there's just like a lot of questions I have because like there's also Jane choosing, like they touch on why Jane chose not to tell many people about her diagnosis. And when I say touch, I mean touch. It's literally because her mom also, which I assume, because we don't know, but her mom also had a battle with cancer. It's not said that it's cancer, but she has trauma from seeing her own mother battling alone. That I guess like she decides that like, no, I will do this silently and I will figure it out myself. Instead, like, you have a Viking god at your disposal. You have Asgardian magic at your disposal. I don't care about my pride at that point because she's literally trying to figure it and solve it herself. But it's like the Jane's whole arc is kind of like she should like it's like let people in and get close instead of pushing them away. But it's like,
see, this gets into what we've spoken about before when it comes to Marvel films, where they have this thing about making female characters suffer more than they need to. But we'll get into that into our special episode. Because I have not watched Thor Love and Thunder. I have not watched the latest Spider-Man film. I have not watched what's it called? The Doctor Strange movie. I still haven't finished whatchamacallit. It's Marvel. And I want to watch She-Hulk because I'm interested I'm interested in the dynamic between Charlie Cox and Tatiana Maslany. Like they're two fantastic actors, so I kind of want to see their dynamic, and I want to see how the show looks. But I've lost all excitement for Marvel content.
I watched the first episode of She-Hulk. I recommend watching it. I think maybe give it to, I'm going to give it until like 3 more episodes though, until like I make a solid decision. But like the last few Marvel shows besides Loki, they've been very focused on the next generation where like, and like, well, no, I also watch Moon Knight, but like, I will get into Miss Marvel one day. I just don't care that much about this new generation of Marvel right now. I know it's going to play a role. They're going to do the Young Avengers and all that, but like, I want to watch it because I hear great things about Miss Marvel, so I should go ahead and like at least give it a chance. But yeah, I think She-Hulk is good. Thor, I think you'll find more frustration than like what you felt, because like I didn't feel too frustrated with the previous films. I think I was just kind of frustrated with like I'm laughing throughout this movie, but it's like, yo, I feel like there's a missed opportunity to go deeper with some of these character arcs in this movie.
Do we really expect better from Taika Waititi though?
I mean,
all shade intended.
I'm not going to dig into that. I like Taika actually, so I'm like, I don't really know if there's more to that. Like, but then again, I haven't seen a lot of his other work. So like, I liked what he did with Thor Ragnarok. So I at least had faith that like, oh, this will be a fun romp. And I'm like, this went too heavy on the romp and not enough on the deep.
Thor Ragnarok worked mainly because of the cast more than the story itself.
I think, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. There was like a lot of different dynamics in Thor Ragnarok, and I liked it in the way they handled sending off Odin and exploring like all these realizations that Thor was coming to. Like Thor's whole arc in the MCU has really been him being humbled. Realizing why he wants to be the mightiest like hero, why he wants to be a hero, him feeling not worthy, then knowing that he still has worth even if he himself feels like he's failed. And now we're here where it's like, Thor, you're not a king, but you're still a god, and you loved a woman, you lost the woman. Like there's this whole Thor is definitely in a space of like trying to find himself. And
he's been trying to find himself for how long now? How many films is
Thor's been going through like literally this is like Thor's going through some shit. And I'm just like, when is Thor not gonna be going through shit anymore? We don't know.
No peace.
He has not, at least not since Endgame. No, Infinity War. So yeah. Anyways, last film. As I mentioned, I covered Crunchyroll Expo this year at San Jose. I did go in person. I got the opportunity. This is actually my first big anime con, so like that was really huge. But I got the opportunity to speak to a bunch of different people. But one of the interviews I was most excited about is I got to talk to the cast of Dragon Ball Super superhero. So specifically, I talked to the voices of Piccolo, Gamma 1 and Gamma 2. And Gamma 1 and Gamma 2 are two new original characters. So basically the premise is that Goku and Vegeta are doing what they do best, training off-world. And Broly's in there from like Dragon Ball Super Broly. So like for people who know, that's one of my favorite Dragon Ball Super movies, but that is for another time. But that's like that is the B plot where like what makes this movie special is that like Gohan and Piccolo are the main stars. Like for a lot of people who are familiar with Dragon Ball, they are probably familiar with the formula of there's a big bad villain that comes. Everybody goes up to fight him. They get knocked down. Vegeta finally goes up and he gets knocked down. And then Goku shows up and he finishes the evil bad guy. And then happy ever after. That does not happen here. Instead, and this is like, I would say anyone who started off watching Dragon Ball like early on, like when it was just Dragon Ball, and they're familiar with the characters from the Red Ribbon Army, there's like they touch on that, and then they're bringing things from like previous years, like from the Dragon Ball franchise to the Dragon Ball Z franchise, and it's like, no, and like that's the best thing to me is because like there's things that like if you're a fan of Dragon Ball, like the entire franchise, it's a very widespreading like timeline of different things that happened, and it's nice that like they touch on it, but they do the work of explaining it.
No, that's more than 20 years because Dragon Ball was up when it was
maybe 30
plus. I'm 30. I'm
1986.
Yeah, so that's good. That's 30. That's 37 years.
Yeah, so they're almost at 40 years. So it's like, but it's like if anybody has ever watched Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super, like there are things that you just like know. Like there's the Red Ribbon Army that Goku used to battle when he was a kid, and they get brought back in the movie. Like when was the last? Like someone who's like a Dragon Ball fan, like me, like when was the last time you heard the Red Ribbon Army mentioned? And it's just like,
so they're for nostalgia.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even that big on nostalgia though, because like the way they do it, it's like it's not so much digging into like the past. It's just that they, oh hey, remember this villain? They've still been around this whole time. Let's see what they've been up to. So like the plot really focuses on like these are the villains, and then like but then it does that thing where like the villains aren't exactly bad guys. I'm not gonna give too much away because I would like people to go into it and experience it. But like the best thing that I find about this is that it gives characters like Gohan and Piccolo some shine. Characters that have basically felt like they took a back seat after the Cell Saga and Buu Saga in the series. So it was nice to see that Piccolo is doing what he does best, and he's trying to remind Gohan that like, hey, just because your father and Vegeta are around doesn't mean we should not stay prepared, because Gohan's just been so focused on studying and being professor and blah 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 that he doesn't really train that much, or that he's just gotten lazy. So this villain presents the opportunity for Gohan to get serious and for him to realize that like just because my dad and Vegeta are around right now doesn't mean I should get relaxed, and that I shouldn't be ready to go if a threat comes again. Because yeah, it's like, dude, your dad's died a few times.
He's dead like what, 15 times, right?
He's died a few times and he's come back, but at this point it's just like, my thought would be like, just because Goku and Vegeta are around does not mean you should just be relaxed at the fact that like, oh yeah, no one's gonna fight the Earth. We're at peaceful times. Like, no, be ready, stay ready. It's just, and it's good, and I just love the voice acting that they do. Like it does a really good job of blending action and comedy in the new animation style, which I was like hesitant at first because it's CGI, but it's smooth. Like it's not like some of these CGI anime like Saint Seiya, which is just so blocky and chunky, and I don't know how else to describe it besides that. Dragon Ball Super feels like you're watching a video game, a high quality video game, but they are also blending in the 2D and 3D animation. Like it's fascinating because you get to see like a background that looks like it's 2D, but like texturized and everything in 3D. But then you like, I no, y'all just have to watch it to understand.
I've seen that in a. I'm trying to think of what cartoon. Is it not
Another good example of that, I would say, while this movie feels like it's more of a blending of 2D and 3D. Lupin the Third, the CGI one that came out 2020, that one is very much more CGI, but it's smooth and like in that. But like I do know what you're talking about. There's been a few other films that have done a good job of blending 2D and 3D CGI animation really well.
Yeah, because I know that I've seen that in a couple thing. A couple animated shows, but not as interesting. Like, Dragon Ball Z. I never really got into it because whenever I would try to watch it, my mom was, "Are you watching?" So the only time I really got to watch Dragon Ball Z is either before my mom came home from work or if I went with my friends and I watched it because my mom was all she's still the same way. She was all about the whole anime. Content, she'd be like, "What is that you watching?" So like, I would only get to watch Dragon Ball Z and like Sailor Moon and like Big O and those kind of cartoons when my mom was not home, or if she went, or if she was in the bedroom sleeping, I would have to turn the TV down really, really low.
Yeah,
those struggles of the olden days. But Dragon Ball Z, wow, Dragon, like Goku, wow, one of the worst fathers ever.
Yeah.
One of the worst fathers ever.
I mean, he's no Shaw Tucker, so from Full Metal Alchemist. So at least he didn't turn his child into a dog.
Listen, but nobody can top my guy in Avatar: The Last Airbender. Like, he's straight Ozai is straight up.
Oh yeah, where Goku literally is just like, it's in his Saiyan nature to like, oh yeah, my child, like, my kids are no, not just being incompetent. It's like him choosing my kids are tough. They can go and battle this monster and he'll win. Whereas like Ozai is literally like, yeah, you bring shame here and you've dishonored me. I'm going to abuse you and burn half your face.
And also, like, I'm an imperialist. I'm a genocidal maniac. I believe in obliterating all these other factions because I think mine is stronger and I'm better. I'm like, you, sir, are just straight up trash. Worst father in fictional history. Absolute garbage.
I mean, sure. But Shao Tucker literally fused his daughter and dog together.
That's from what cartoon?
That's from Full Metal Alchemist.
That's what happens in Full Metal Alchemist?
That's one of the stories that happened in Full Metal Alchemist.
Wow.
He's a villain. He's not a main villain, but like, yeah.
Seriously?
He transmutates his daughter and he also did the same thing to his wife. Before, like 5 years before, and nobody wondered.
Apart with their canines, and they didn't tear him apart with their canines, like rip into him.
No, because they didn't know. Like, it's still a child's brain and a dog's brain, so like it's like they don't dig into it much. It's literally like a 3-episode arc, but it's like thinking of it as like, oh yeah, you put a 5-year-old's brain and a dog's brain together. What is it going to do? Question its existence and wonder what's going on and like tell you that it's in pain. Anyways, that has been So Here's What Happened.
Woo. So what a way to end it.
I know.
Let's end it on a bit of a higher note than talking about Trash Man. So what's else in store for you, Nisha? Why do I sound like a Telecaster right there?
I know. I love it though. I love it. No, I would say right now for me, I'm doing more cosplays. I just did it is at today when we're recording. It is Bunny Suit Day, also known as Bunny Girl Day, but anybody can wear a bunny suit if they would choose so. So I did my Bulma cosplay and that was fun. And I have a few more cosplays coming up. As far as like writing and stuff, I'm going to be working on some more original stuff. I have something that I cannot speak until it is out again, so I will be quiet on that. And yeah, that's enough for me. On to Carolyn.
What else do I have? For me, as I said, that you guys can, as usual, turn into my YouTube channel to see interviews that I've done over the last couple of months. For me, in September is festival season continues, so I'll be covering the TIFF festival, which is the Toronto International Film Festival here in Toronto, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be in person, so this is going to be my first in-person festival since 2020. I'm going to be very selective in what I see though, because again, we're still in the pandemic, people, and I'm still very cognizant of it. I'm still very careful and conscious. So I'll be very select in the films that I want to watch. One of the film at the top of my list is The Woman King, starring Viola Davis and a whole cast of badass dark-skinned Black women, directed by Gina Prince Blythewood. We know this is a film about the Dohemi and the Amazons from Africa, and about the Portuguese and the French were trying to invade them, and they were like, no, you shall not pass. So I can't wait to watch it. That's at the top of my list. And also there's The Decision to Leave by Park Chan-wook, one of my favorite filmmakers, South Korean film. He's the filmmaker who did Lady Vengeance and The Handmaiden, and so I'm really looking forward to this one. And that's it for me for right now. I'm just gonna be working on getting interviews for TIFF. And also I also took part in I was also part of a panel for the K-Mania, the influence of Korean film and culture on today's media landscape, and we talked about it for TIFF's Summer Soul event, and it was a blast. I met some great people. I met Grayson, who's a PhD student studying media and Korean culture, and I also was on the panel with Michelle Cho, who also does Korean media studies. And our panel moderator, Madeline, she was amazing. I think she did a fantastic job moderating. It was just so good. It was a literal dream of truth, because you guys know I love to talk, obviously, if you have a podcast. But It's always been my dream to be able to talk on a panel about Korean film and about K-dramas, for goodness sakes, and how that influences TV and stuff now. It was just so much fun. I hope to be able to get to do it again soon. And I think that's it for me for big announcements. I don't have anything else other than TIFF coming up. So I think we can wrap up here. LaNeysha, tell the people where they can find you and your work.
Yeah, y'all can find me and my work over at But Why Though, which is now butwhythough.net. So yeah, the podcast has been dropped. So y'all make sure you remember that. It's butwhythough.net. And y'all can also find me on Instagram and Twitter, mostly on Instagram. So hit me up over there. And that is at Neysha Plays. What about you, Carolyn?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram using the handle at Carrie Sanders, at CRIE Sanders. You can usually find my most recent work, interviews and writers in my pinned tweets, and also in posts on Instagram. And you can find all of my published work on my R3 page. Just go to r3.com/Carolyn Hines. You can go to my YouTube channel under my name, Carolyn Hines, HINDS, and find YouTube video versions of my interviews for Carolyn Talks, for African American Film Critics Association, Beyond the Romance, which is my Asian drama podcast / YouTube channel, as I like to say. I just love saying that part. And you can find links for my panel that I did for TIFF there in the panel and interviews playlist, or you can also go to the TIFF site, the TIFF YouTube channel as well, to watch the full panel there as well. And you can follow my hashtags, Dramas with Carrie, for dramas that I've been tweeting and look at my reactions to dramas. And I also do Saturday Night Sci-Fi. Every Saturday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, I and my co-host, we host a live tweet session about films and TV shows from around the world with a sci-fi element in it. And for August, we call it Avatar August, where we've been doing it for 3 years. Yay! And this is our third year, so we're doing season 3 of Avatar: The Last Airbender. And it's been so much fun. And I just love that series. Every time I watch it, I find something new about it. And as we said, Ozai is the worst father. But I think it's also one of the most well-written one of the most well-written shows, because I think the character arcs are done so well. Like, my favorite character is Zuko. Like, he has such a great character arc for season 3. And of course, there is this iconic fight between Zuko and Azula, which is one of the most beautifully animated sequences ever. The orchestration, the choreography is stunning. It's one of my favorite action sequences, film, live action, TV show, whatever. I just love that sequence. I always look forward to when I watch this season. And I think that is it. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Carolyn.
So here's what happened.
Yes, I you know what? Because I've gotten so accustomed. It's almost like I'm automatic for me now. But yes, Neysha, thank you for another episode of So Here's What Happened. And you can find So Here's What Happened. Of course, you're listening to podcasts. You can find it on butwhythough.net, as well as like Acast, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and other podcast streaming platforms. And you can interact with Neysha and I on our Twitter, and I think you can also get recommendations for shows or films or manga, whatever that you would like us to talk about, or for our followers to read and watch as well. And everyone, until the next episode, stay safe. Bye.
Bye.